So when people talk about EVs and long distance driving, the conversation almost always goes in one direction. More range, bigger battery, longer driving distance, less charging. And fair enough, that sounds logical. But I think the more interesting question is this. Do you actually need an extra long range EV to do interstate travel in Malaysia? Or have we maybe become a bit too obsessed with the range numbers itself? Because today we're driving from KL to Penang and then back again in the Leapmotor B10 Design. And rather than just treating it as like a normal media drive, I thought this would be a good chance to ask a slightly bigger question. When it comes to EV interstate travel, is it really all about having the biggest battery possible? Or is the real answer a bit more complicated than that? Of course, long-range EVs are great. Nobody's going to complain about having more range. But the problem is, the moment you start chasing those bigger numbers, the price usually goes up quite a bit too, sometimes beyond 150,000 ringgit. So this is where the Leapmotor B10 Design gets interesting, because at nearly 100,000, sub 120,000, the question is, could something like this already be enough? The first thing the B10 gets right is that it doesn't feel awkward straight away. So it has that footprint of a family SUV, it's a proper C segment without immediately feeling bulky. And that's important because I think 80% of the time you're going to do 9 to 5 basic, regular, everyday Joe stuff. So if the car already feels like hard work before you even reach the highway, well then you're already fighting an uphill battle. But this one feels easy enough to place, visibility is decent, and because it's electric, the response is clean and immediate. And actually, I find that this is one of the more comfortable EVs to drive in tight spaces, and that's because it's just nimble. But not only that, it's also got decent power. 240 Newton meters going to the rear wheels, it feels alert enough to make town driving easy. So once you get onto the highway, the B10 Design starts showing where it makes sense. The interesting thing is that the design does not get more power than the lower variant. What it gets is more usability, bigger battery, longer range, and faster DC charging. At highway speeds, this is where you start judging the car more seriously. Is it calm enough? Is it quiet enough? Does it feel settled? Because long distance EV usability is not just about how much battery you have, it's also about how pleasant the car itself is. Once you've been in it for a while, you'll start to understand this. First, it'll start to show how comfortable it is. Maybe the seats are not comfortable, but in this B10 Design, I like the seats. We've just done a very long journey and the seats are comfortable. I sat in the back and the seats are comfortable too, with a lot of knee room. So yeah, all of these things matter. It's not just about how far you can go and things like that. It's the whole experience. And speaking about experience, it was a nice surprise how well she handled our highways. This was a big surprise because usually China EVs are floaty and bouncy. This one settles quickly. I guess this is what happens when the car is meant for a global market, not just for the China markets. I noticed that some EVs which are just meant for the China markets, their ride is quite floaty and bouncy. And another surprise was how fun the B10 felt on B roads. Sometimes on a long highway trip, unexpected detours take you off the expressway and onto smaller, twistier roads, and this is actually another area where the B10 excels. It feels nicely balanced, the steering is precise, and that rear wheel drive layout really comes alive when the road starts to tighten up. It's not wild or overly serious, just the right kind of fun, the sort that makes a detour feels less like a delay and more like a bonus. Okay, so kita baru sampai Ipoh. Range kat situ tunjuk 140km. Masa kita kat KL tadi, it had around 400km. Laju kan habis? Well, that might seem shocking, but we weren't really driving like a normal person. We were doing a lot of funny things to check her out. Okay, so our car has returned from a quick top up, around 20 minutes DC charging. Let's see how much range it has. So it's about 282 kilometers, so that should be enough to get us to Penang. Let's go. So after Ipoh, we drove to Penang, but we weren't driving it like an EV person would be driving it, if you know what I mean. We were just driving it normal, just like how a person might drive their ICE vehicle. And to be honest, it was unintentional to do this, but it showed something really good about the B10, which means you can reach Penang, drive it like a normal person would, and be fine and reach to your hotel. So day 2, our return leg to KL, and who doesn't want to go home after going on a holiday as quickly as possible? So we had a strategy. But before that, let's explore a little bit of the B10's interior space. So the first thing that the B10 design gets right is that it doesn't feel awkward straight away. The B in the B10 name is actually meant to say it is a B segment car, but in the typical Leapmotor fashion, that car offers that C segment class up space, which makes it a proper good footprint for a family SUV. Which means it's already bigger than it's supposed to be, which means it's perfect for families. There's also a lot of tech goodies in this car. There's a strong ADAS package plus a 360-degree camera and the sort of convenience features that matter more on longer drives than they do on short test loops. And yes, it does have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. But generally this cabin is very comfortable. I like it a lot, and you know, for something that looks kind of small on the outside, it's quite spacious on the inside. Even the sound system is quite decent, and when you're in the high speeds you can hear the music clearly. Yeah, there's a lot of wind noise when you're going fast, but that's because the car is very silent, so the only thing that's intruding is the wind noise, but that's because we were driving fast probably. So this design variant is also one that feels more complete. It gets things like Acotec leather seats. That's basically some sort of bamboo manufactured material that absorbs smell, and tear resistant panoramic roof with electric sunshade, ambient lighting, automatic air conditioning, plus Bluetooth and NFC key access. Even the ventilated seats at the front switches on when it feels like it's too hot. At the back here, the seats are really comfortable. I mean, they feel very supportive and there's a lot of leg room here. Check this out, okay? Usually when you move the steering wheel, the meter cluster doesn't really follow you, but in the B10, see? That meter follows the steering wheel, so you're never gonna get a position where you really can't see the meter cluster, and I think that's quite ace. So with a full charger battery, we headed back to KL, and our strategy was to go towards Tapa R&R, where there was Shell recharge with the fast DC charger. Our ETA back at Kuala Lumpur to where we started from was always hovering around 4 PM, but that's before we had to recharge, of course. Of course, with an EV, the charging stop is still part of the experience, and this is where the B10 Design's hardware becomes very relevant. This top spec version supports up to 168 kilowatt DC charging, and Leapmotor quotes 30 to 80% top up in under 20 minutes. AC charging is up to 11 kilowatts and 3.3 kilowatts V2L is standard. So let's check out how long we will need. We plugged in the charger with 88 kilometers left at 2:55 PM. By 3:30 PM, we were up to 247 kilometers. So yes, the B10 Design can charge faster, but here the charger was clearly the bottleneck, probably not helped by the hungry AMG next to us that had already plugged in first. Still, we got enough charge to make it back to KL, and while the stop did cost us about an hour overall, at least half of that went to a proper toilet break, food, drinks, and a bit of rest. So half an hour at the charger and about 45-minute delay to our destination. Is that acceptable? Honestly, I'd say that's not too bad. But at the same time, we were also a bit lucky because there was no queue at the charging area. So after this drive, I think the Leapmotor B10's biggest strength is that it feels complete. It's quick enough, comfortable enough, well equipped enough, and even on smaller back roads, it's more fun than expected. The rear wheel drive layout, the balanced handling, and the precise steering give it a bit of character too, which definitely helps. And yes, while the charging stop did cost us some time, it still felt manageable. We were lucky there was no queue, and that obviously makes a difference, but overall the trip never felt like hard work. And maybe that's the real takeaway here. Long range EVs are great, but they also cost a lot more. So the real question is, do you actually need all of that extra range, or is something like the B10 already enough? After this drive, I'd say that question feels more relevant than ever.